Hi, hello, hi, Hyperpop Tano here, guys. And today we're gonna do an iceberg video. It's probably been my number one requested video to do was the Hyperpop iceberg. I know how passionate a lot of people are about this topic and about this iceberg specifically, and I felt what better idea than to take it upon myself to sort of explain and elaborate and contextualize upon some very important pivotal key moments in the hyperpop fandom. So Meadow on Twitter created a wonderful iceberg, but there was a lot on it. So I've decided to sort of consolidate it down into the best, juiciest, beefiest examples of what the hyperpop community has to offer, and so we can talk about like the best of the best. So without further ado, let's get into the top layer. We're in the sky. We haven't seen the bottom of the iceberg yet. Maybe it really is that small. Maybe there's nothing underneath the water, nefariously yet neutrally looming in the deep. So let's start off with the top layer here. And the first thing we can talk about is the 100 Gex tree. If you guys don't know, 100 Gex is a hyperpop duo consisting of Laura Les and Dylan Brady, and their album 1000 Gex on the album cover. They're standing in front of a tree, and so people visited that tree. They left offerings to the tree, treating it as a bit of a shrine. It's become a very iconic piece of iconography in the hyperpop community. Then up next we have Charlie XCX. Charlie XCX is a British pop artist. She is generally credited as being one of the progenitors of the hyperpop movement, with a lot of her work with A.G. Cook and the aforementioned Dylan Brady. She did a really she brought hyperpop to the mainstream. What can I say? And then up next is actually a bit of a recent one with Low Taper Fade, which was a bit of a joke song from Eric DOA. What if Ninja, the popular Fortnite streamer, got a low taper fade, and he sang it in a nice little croon. It kind of blew up, and then as a result, Ninja got a low taper fade. And then the last one for the sky above the iceberg is the Spotify Hyperpop playlist. This one's pretty self-explanatory, guys. Spotify has a Hyperpop playlist, and they put Hyperpop on it. So now we're underneath the water. Turns out the iceberg is bigger than we may have previously thought. We're going to kick that one off with the Niztopia charity stream. Not only did Niztopia hold a charity stream, that's also an Eric DOA song that was submitted for the charity stream. A lot of great songs were submitted. A lot of money was raised for a great cause. It was a good time. Then we got the TB_snare.wave. It's the Tracy Break snare. Pretty much every hyperpop song uses. If you're a true hyperpopper, then you've heard this. You've heard this snare. Then up next we have Woolsocket, Michigan, which was the made-up town, the fictional town that underscores kind of put into her ARG and for the narrative of her album Woolsocket, named after the town that was made up. Everyone knows this. Then up next we have Corefish. Corefish is a red-shelled crustacean Pokemon with a short tail similar to a lobster. Its eyes are saucer-like with small pupils, and it has 3 spikes on the top of its head. It's a water type, and at level 30 it evolves into Crawdaunt. It's got a base stat total of 308, but honestly, it's fun to use if you like water types. They're fine, and Crawdaunt's not too bad either. And then we got Dante Red. Who's that, you might ask? Who's this mysterious figure pushing out music? Well, Dante Red is actually the alter ego of Eric DOA, and is essentially a more violent alter ego who just talks his shit, opposed to Eric, who mostly talks about real topics. Dante is more of a rapper, while Eric is more of an artist. Braden Ross clone allegations. So as we all know, Braden Ross popping off, making some fire music, but little people know that there's actually the idea that Braden Ross might actually be a clone of the original Braden Ross, which may or may not be alive, kept in some sort of a warehouse owned by the federal government somewhere in the desert, maybe even underwater, kind of like how Paul McCartney was allegedly cloned, or how Avril Lavigne was allegedly cloned. And there's been very small details that some true sleuths have been picking up on. We'll never know, maybe. Failed backflip on stage. This is in reference to a Glaive show, an Eric DOA show, when somebody tried to do a backflip on stage and they failed, and it was really embarrassing. It was man, wouldn't want that to be me. And with that, we've kind of moved. We're moving past these initial waters, these shallow waters, and we're gonna move down into the real shit, the shit that even some true hyperpoppers out there might not know. Brad Taste in Music versus Thatcher Blackwood. So as everybody knows, Brad Taste in Music and Thatcher Blackwood have a long history beef together, and they finally evened the score at the Martinsburg, West Virginia Tough Man contest, where Thatcher Blackwood and Brad Taste in Music went for a record 38 rounds, resulting in a draw between both fighters. It was a spectacle to watch. I was, honored to have witnessed such a piece of history in the making, and I cannot wait for the rematch. Fantano Light 5. This is the score that he gave my YouTube channel. Bell Pepper War. This was a war that went on within the hyperpop community, in which people argued over which bell peppers they preferred. There's 3 common colors that they come in. There was 20 million casualties and many more involved. Dante Blue. So this is actually another Eric Doa alter ego. The one of them is red, and then this one's blue. And if the red one is like the rapper and Eric Doa is the artist, then Dante Blue is like a evil fucked up version of the evil fucked up versions. There's layers to this. Drake invented hyperpop. So not many people know this, but Drake, Aubrey Graham, television star turned biggest rapper in the world, actually is typically and commonly credited in more semantic circles in the hyperpop community with actually being not a progenitor but the progenitor of the genre. And quite honestly, I think that we should all just say thank you for that. Thank you for doing that. The voices. So this one's interesting. The voices are getting louder, and I'm consistently hearing them more often. The recommended advice and medication that I was prescribed has not been working properly. It's not been working as much as it did, despite a dosage uppage. You know what I mean? If you know what I'm talking about, some of you will know. But the voices, they're getting louder. And now we're at the depths. We're at the bottom of the iceberg. Let's talk about the real shit that only true hyperpop fans are going to know about. The Watergate scandal was a major political scandal in the United States involving the administration of President Richard Nixon from 1972 to 1974 that led to Nixon's resignation. The scandal stemmed from the Nixon administration's attempts to cover up its involvement in the June 17, 1972 break-in of the Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington, D.C. at the Watergate office building. After the 5 perpetrators of the break-in were arrested, the press and the Department of Justice connected the cash found on them at the time to the Committee for the Re-election of the President. Further investigations, along with the revelations during subsequent trials of the burglars, led to the U.S. House of Representatives to grant the U.S. House Judiciary Committee additional investigative authority to probe into certain matters within the jurisdiction, and led to the Senate to create the U.S. Senate Watergate Committee, which held hearings. Witnesses testified that Nixon had approved plans to cover up the administration's involvement in the burglary, and that there was a voice-activated taping system in the Oval Office. Throughout the investigation, Nixon's administration resisted the probes, and this led to a constitutional crisis. The Senate Watergate hearings were broadcast gavel to gavel nationwide by PBS and aroused public interest. Several major revelations, and the egregious presidential actions obstructing the investigation later in 1973 prompted the House to commence an impeachment process against Nixon. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in the United States versus Nixon that Nixon had to turn over the Oval Office tapes to government investigators. The Nixon White House tapes revealed that he had conspired to cover up activities that took place after the burglary and had later tried to use federal officials to deflect attention from the investigation. House Judiciary Committee approved 3 articles of impeachment against Nixon for obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and contempt of Congress. With his complicity in the cover-up made public upon release of the tapes, Nixon's political support completely eroded. His impeachment by the House and conviction by the Senate became a certainty, and he resigned from office under Section 1 of the 25th Amendment on August 9, 1974. He is the only president to have resigned from office. On September 8, 1974, his successor, Gerald Ford, pardoned him. Hyperpoop. It's hyperpoop. Then we have Dante Green, who is the third and final iteration of what's his name? Fucking Eric whatever. It's the third color. It's fucked up beyond belief. You get it. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that I was able to shed some light on some kind of like community in jokes and secrets and things that you might have not known about before. Thank you so much for watching. Catch me in the next video where I